All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us on our Facebook Live tonight. We are joined by ThedaCare's Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jennifer Frank. I'm Cassandra Wallace with the Public Relations team. We are talking all things back to school related. This is really an opportunity that we are hoping to provide for the community to answer your questions. So we want to take in the viewer and audience questions here. So please be commenting in this live stream here. I will be monitoring those comments and then taking your comments, asking those to Dr. Frank, and she's hopefully going to provide us some great answers. And, we want to make sure that this is not really district specific questions. We want to keep this more generic focus, the things that all parents might be facing as we're all presented with an unusual and unique school year with some blended learning options. So we're asking that everybody keep the comments respectful, which we know that you all will. But we really just want to talk to parents out there and want to know what they're wondering when it comes to how to prepare school lunches if you're staying home and virtual, or how do you get your children in the right routine if they might be staying virtual, or what if you are experiencing that blended learning option. So again, Dr. Frank is wonderful in making herself available for these questions. So please ask your questions and we are more than happy to get to them. We'll get to as many as possible. So Dr. Frank, let's start off just talking about, how we should be communicating to our children, because so many are facing a very unique school year. So what should those first conversations really start to look like?
So I think one thing to consider is that the start of the school year is always a fun time. Kids are usually excited about their teachers, going back to school, seeing friends, all of those things. Whether your child's going back to in-person learning or virtual, you can still really talk about all the exciting aspects of back to school, the things that they're going to learn this year, the types of activities they can get involved in, even seeing their friends or meeting their new teachers. Helping to kind of normalize the fact that a lot has changed, but a lot is still the same, and trying to keep it as positive as possible. It's also great to ask your children what they're worried about. And obviously what a elementary school child might be worried about might be very different than what a high school student may be worried about. So asking them, are you feeling nervous about your schedule? Are you feeling scared that you're not going to be able to learn well? Are you sad about anything? And really talk about what they're feeling, validate it, help to acknowledge that we're all a little anxious and uncertain, and then talk about what are strategies that they can take to feel more in control of the situation.
All right, those are very great examples. A couple of other questions that we are seeing a lot is surrounding masks.
Yes.
Most districts in the state are preparing for their students to wear some sort of face covering. So I think a lot of the questions are around how do you get your children to first understand the importance of masking, and how do you help them feel comfortable when doing that? So what recommendations do you have for us?
Sure. I think of masks like bike helmets, right? So no child wants to wear a bike helmet. They usually fight you when you talk about it initially, but you just normalize it. It becomes an important thing we do for safety. We do it every time we get on something with wheels. You can help them pick out their own bike helmet and make it fun and set a great example by wearing your bike helmet. Similarly with masks, we want to talk about why we're doing it, the importance of keeping themselves and the people around them safe, particularly their friends, their family, their loved ones. We want to talk about it as a community responsibility. We're all doing this for each other to stay healthy and well. And then you want to help them feel more comfortable in it. And that could be anything from wearing it when they're doing normal activities, such as coloring, watching screens, just kind of sitting around with family. And then sometimes you can play. If the child is a younger child, they may enjoy playing like hide and seek with masks, or playing by putting masks on a favorite friend, or looking in the mirror and having contests to see who can have the silliest eyes. So helping them to become comfortable with it, as well as helping them find a mask that fits comfortably. We want it to be snug around their nose and their mouth, but they should obviously be able to breathe comfortably. Helping children understand that there's different types of masks and patterns of masks, and giving them some control over the masks that they choose and that they get to use can also be helpful. And then obviously being a great example so that when you go out grocery shopping or doing your errands, you're wearing a mask and showing your children that this is a healthy, safe, important thing to do.
Good recommendations there. I feel like a lot of times children, like you said, they mimic what they see their parents do.
Mhm.
So if we start off with those really positive conversations, and we talk about really protecting ourselves and protecting our friends, that's where I feel like a lot of kids are like, oh, absolutely, I can do that. It's something I can do.
Absolutely. It's like, I also think about it like rain, right? Like you don't want to get wet. You can't control whether it rains. We can't control whether or not COVID is here, but we can do a lot of things to protect ourselves from getting wet. We can wear rain boots and a rain jacket and an umbrella, and so that we can still enjoy the things we like to do, like going outside, but we just do them with some protection to make sure that we stay safe. And again, it doesn't have to be a major focus of going back to school. And there's so much else about going back to school that's fun, exciting, interesting, and that should be part of the conversation. This is just a part of it. And helping them to know this is something you have control over, this is something you can do to stay safe and help other people is particularly important because kids don't always feel like they're in a lot of control of their situation. And particularly now, many people don't feel like they're in control of the situation.
Absolutely. It's giving them a little bit of empowerment to make them feel like they're making a difference in this, pandemic that we're all experiencing, from the smallest
Absolutely.
to the biggest. They're all
Mhm.
making a difference for sure. So we are getting a lot of comments coming in here. Again, we're trying to get to as many as possible. Continue to leave those comments, and Dr. Frank is going to address them. We'll probably talk more about masks, I'm sure, coming up in just a bit. So some good recommendations there. We have a question from Jessica. She is asking about sports. I
Mhm.
know this has also been a very popular topic that's been discussed. She's asking if sports are safe and the
Mhm.
best way to participate if families choose to go that route.
Yeah, this is definitely a question that's near and dear to my heart as I have three student athletes who are all restarting their sports. And I think with everything COVID, unless you are sealing yourself in a plastic bubble, there's always some element of risk in things we do. So what we're trying to do is not eliminate risk. That's very difficult to do. We're trying to minimize risk, so make things safer. So there are safer ways to engage in sports and less safe ways. So the safest way, of course, is to do individual activity or to do an individual activity at least 6 feet away from other people. One of the concerns with sports is that when you're engaged in sports, you're usually breathing hard. So maybe you're exhaling more virus potentially if you're infected. So helping to keep kids safe and away from each other can be helpful. So for example, if you have a soccer team, focusing on individual dribbling drills rather than scrimmages might be a good way to go. The other thing you want to do is focus on not sharing a lot of equipment. So again, this is a great time for everyone to have their own water bottle, not to use the big jug, for them to use their own soccer ball, those kinds of things. And then if you can do the exercising or the sports outside, also ideal. There's going to be better ventilation there. And then cohorting children. So, for example, on my daughter's swim team, they've divided the swim team into two cohorts, and those cohorts will train together for the entire season. And again, it just minimizes the number of other people they're coming into contact with. And also minimizing things like locker rooms and everyone showering at the end of practice, things that are going to allow extra contact between people. Again, I have two cross country athletes, and they again run in a small cohort, and that cohort is going to be their group for the whole duration of the season. So there are a lot of things you can do to make it safer. And if your child is not able to participate in sports, so if the season was canceled or you're not comfortable with the things that have been put into place to keep them safe, it's still wonderful to continue exercise. There's so many online opportunities. The weather's still beautiful outside. It's a great thing to do as a family. Absolutely, is a safe and wonderful thing to do.
Those are all really great points. Like you said, we want to make sure that our children are staying active, even with, modified sports. Can you talk a little bit about, and Dr. Frank, I know that you and I have talked about this a lot, about
Mhm.
just the mental impact that staying active and being physical has during this pandemic. What does it do for our children? Why is it so important to keep them active?
So exercise is like the fountain of youth in my mind. It really solves so many different issues and helps keep people healthy, including children. So one thing is that just the need to move. Your body was meant to move, not to sit still all the time. And kids often, when they're moving around, are also playing, which is very important to their neurologic development and their ability to incorporate social skills, whether that's with a sibling, a parent, or a friend at a safe distance. It's also important for mental health. We know that there's lower risk of depression and anxiety with exercise. If you have depression or anxiety, your symptoms get better with exercise. It also often helps promote good sleep. And again, sleep is very important for our overall well being, both mentally and physically. It's also something to do in the routine of the day. So, particularly if your child's going to be learning at home, this is a really important thing to incorporate so that, again, the day is not just stuck in front of a computer, for example, but that they have a opportunity to go outside and play or an opportunity to exercise, again, to incorporate some different things in their day.
Yes. So that brings me to my next point here, really about virtual learning and how we can help parents um, structure the day if that is an option for them. Again, many parents, we completely understand that, maybe they can't be home because they are working, that maybe they're sending children to another site or a daycare setting for that, maybe a smaller group type learning if they're doing virtual. So if parents are at home with their children and they have virtual learning, what are some ways that we can help structure their day so it's, again, sort of mimicking what we would do in traditional school, but again, giving them that flexibility of being at home? What are some things that you recommend in terms of schedules and staying active and things like that?
So schedule is very important. I think it's important for all of us. If anyone has worked from home, they know how difficult it can be if you're still in your pajamas at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, trying to work from your kitchen table. It just doesn't work quite the same. So the schedule is absolutely important, and trying to get children back on a school type schedule where they're going to bed at a certain time and waking up at a certain time every day, making sure you're allowing time for meals. So for kids, often they need all three meals plus some snack breaks between 2 and 3 each day. So incorporating those in, and then having their school time and having them show up at their wherever they're going to be doing schooling. So setting up a study space that promotes learning. So, for example, having a wall map of the world or having some type of educational display up, again, just to help promote, yep, this is where we learn. Having that space be something they can help create and design, and that they have all of the tools that they're going to need for their school day. They could even pack their backpack to go to that spot and leave their backpack there, really to mentally separate that this is school and my room is for playing, for example. You also want to make sure that wherever they're learning is as distraction free as possible. So, not a lot of things going on in the background, not a lot of noise, an area where they can concentrate and focus. But again, in a normal school day, you get up and move around a lot. You go to the bathroom, you get your pencil sharpened, you go out for recess. So, particularly for younger children, they need the ability to get up and move around. And so, incorporating those snack times, free time, downtime, exercise time, family time, playtime, all of those things into their schedule. Children really enjoy routine, and that makes them feel safe. And this is particularly important this year because so many things have changed. Even teenagers, even though they say they don't like routine, do thrive in a routine. So it's a great thing to do to come up with that routine before the school year starts with your kid and say, hey, how should we do this? And what are the things that they can have control over and contribute to? Posting that so everyone knows it. And then this is the hard part, is parents have to stick to the schedule. So sometimes it's too easy as a parent to just fudge the schedule a little bit because it's more convenient for you, for whatever you're doing. But as much as possible, honoring that schedule and sticking with it is really going to help reinforce the importance of it. And then making weekend days different. Weekends are different. We're not in school. We're doing different things. Again, to kind of separate what the child is doing out in their normal week.
Oh, I love those ideas too. We, during the end of last school year, we created a COVID calendar, is what we called it at our house, where it truly was, our day was broken up by hour and 30-minute increments. And, we made sure to schedule time for downtime and free time for our little ones. And then we had a list of options that they could choose from. And I think giving them choices in that free time really made them feel like they had a little bit of control too.
Yeah. And kids may also really be able to bring what their typical school day looked like before COVID into that routine. Like usually we had a snack at 10 o'clock. Okay, well, that's when we'll have the snack again, just to keep that control and being able to participate in how their day flows.
Yes, that's wonderful. So we are getting some comments here. Again, we're getting to as many as we can. Please leave your comments. This is your time with Dr. Frank. I am just moderating. She's going to answer all of your questions for you. We do have a question where this is perfect timing when we're discussing this. It's how do you work from home and juggle homeschooling? And Dr. Frank, I don't know if there's a right answer here for this one, but maybe you can provide some insight or maybe some suggestions.
So there's no perfect answer. And I mean, again, as the mom of 4 kiddos, I recognize that you can have rules and structure and routines and spaces, and that can all get blown up if there's a fight over who gets the last bit of Fruit Loops or whatever it is. So I think part of it is being patient with yourself, recognizing this is not going to be perfect. The quality of your work may not be what it would be if you were in your office. And then just again, being kind and gentle with yourself and those around you. As much as you can set the standard about when you are working, what is okay to bother you about and what is not okay to bother you about, very important. If you, for example, if your child sees you working and then they see you on Google, like searching for something and watching funny cat videos, they're not going to respect your time or your space. If you can say, hey, you're at work, that's work is school, and then I'm at work and I'm doing my work, and we're going to have a break together at 10 o'clock. These are the things I want you to do before we have that break. Again, can really reinforce that. And then having rules. What are the rules? We have kind of silly rules in my house about when you can bother mom and dad when we're having private time, and they involve, horrible things happening. So it's a little bit tongue in cheek, but again, helping identify if you need a question, if you have a question, we're going to save up all of those questions for our break at 10, and we're going to go through them together so that you're, again, not constantly interrupted. Making sure the child starts the day with everything they need. Do you have all your pencils? Do you have your calculator, your books? Those kinds of things I think can really help. And then breaking up the day into chunks that allow you to have enough focus that you can get your work done, but that are not so long, again, an 8-hour block of time that a child's not going to be able to comply with that.
Absolutely. Very good tips there. I like how you said to be patient with yourself. And I think having those conversations probably with your employer or your, direct supervisor is probably good, just so everybody's on the same page. Again, just making sure that those lines of communication are open.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And you are probably going to do much better work if you have an hour of focus time than if you have 4 hours of constant interruption. The other option is to work with your partner and split the day. So, I have a 4-hour block of time, then you have a 4-hour block of time, and then we have play time for the kids and we can both get some work done. The other thing is making sure that you treat it like a work day. So, for example, a lot of us have to plan for dinner time before we leave the house in the morning. Make sure that you're doing that same type of preparation, even if you're going to be working from home again, so you're not interrupted trying to make dinner at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the same time you're trying to field a call.
Yes, absolutely. That preparation should still be similar to what you were doing before. Some comments that we have here. Jason is asking about children's mental health while they are 100% virtual. And I think this is a good opportunity for us to talk about how important social connectedness is, even when children are virtual. How do we help them stay connected with friends, relatives, and how does that play into their mental health?
Yeah, I think that it is a real concern. And actually, some of the strong recommendations about trying to promote in-school learning are founded on the idea that social connection and how children learn together is really important. Obviously, we need to balance that against safety. And I think that's the hard decision both parents and school districts are making. I have 4 kids, and they all reacted differently to virtual schooling. And so part of it is recognizing not every child is going to have the same response. For example, one of my children did great by doing most of his virtual schooling after hours when the house was quiet and everyone was in bed, and he got all of his work done. Another one of my children really benefited from having my husband or I check in. What are you working on? What's your plan for the day? Let's go through that. So just recognizing kids, learn differently. They interact socially differently. They're going to handle those social connections differently. So emphasizing the importance of staying in contact with friends, either if you have a small social circle and can do that safely in person, that's one option. The second option is to do things virtually. And so helping kids to learn, okay, we're going to have a virtual play date, for example, on Tuesday afternoon at 4 with, Joey, for example. The other is making sure that your kids recognize that it is important to engage in that. So some kids could withdraw and not want to go through it, or it's kind of a weird thing for them to do, but just really to help encourage them and set that up. They may do better initially with doing some type of virtual meeting with a grandparent or some other family members. In our family, we have a Zoom call with my husband's family every Sunday night at 7 o'clock. And we have learned some virtual games we can play with each other and just kind of having some fun, almost like we would have around the Thanksgiving dinner table. There's also, my mother-in-law has had baking night and crochet night. So looking at those types of things, activities that you can do. As far as the mental health aspect of things, kids probably are worried about things you're not even thinking about. So asking them, what are you worried about? What are you scared about? What have you heard? And then also asking, when do you feel better? Like, is it better for you to do your work in the morning and play in the afternoon? Or do you need some quiet time in the morning to be at your best? And helping them through that. And then helping them to give words to their emotions, right? I mean, this is challenging for us all. I don't know anyone who doesn't have some degree of anxiety about all of the changes occurring. So helping to normalize that without dwelling on it. So yeah, you're right. This is a scary time. We're concerned about grandma being safe. We're going to do everything we can do to be safe. Let's set up a time to talk to grandma and see how her day went. And then we're going to play a board game, something like that. And then your attitude also is really important. So helping them to stay positive because you're positive. You're a smart kid. You're going to be able to do this. Your teacher's really going to help you. Are all things you can do to help your children succeed.
Wonderful. I like how you talked about that too. Just saying that it might be okay not to be okay. And here's what we're going to do about it. And here's how we're all going to help you get through it.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Dr. Frank, a couple of questions about, let's see, we're getting, again, some comments here. So we want people, again, this is your time with Dr. Frank. Please leave your comments. What are the things that you and your children are wondering about as we're heading back to school during, some blended learning options here? We've seen a lot of questions coming through on social media recently about managing screen time because so many children will, of course, be using technology. And I have my 2-year-old running around saying, no technology, because he hears me saying, we've had way too much technology today. And that's crazy. But how do we, kind of do a mental check and say, are we managing our screen time well? And how much is too much? And what's the right type of screen time?
Absolutely. This is an area where I'm going to be talking to myself as much as to everyone else, because it's really hard. It is really hard, particularly when kids are used to using their computer for school. And for our kids, they are savvy about knowing whether mom or dad are around and what screen should be up, whether it looks like they're doing their schooling or doing something else. So talking about rules around screens, what are the safe rules in your house around screens? What are the things you're allowed to do? What are the things you're not allowed to do? Where are you allowed to have a screen or an internet connection? That kind of thing. Like, we discourage internet use in the bedrooms, for example, just because we can't monitor it as well. The other really hard part is setting a good example yourself. So yesterday I was talking to my 11-year-old, and this is so embarrassing, but he had to take the phone out of my hand to get my attention, which obviously, us setting a good example is going to be very important as well. And then having some flexibility around your rules. So for example, the American Academy of Pediatrics has pretty strict recommendations around screen time. And the reason for that is not that there's something evil about screens. It's that kids do what we do. If you're on a screen, you're not exercising, being social, doing other types of things. And kids so much need to play. So how can you make sure they're getting all the things that they need and that screen time is not those important things away, like sleep and time with family. So some of the things to think about are what works for your family. What is a reasonable amount of time to spend on screens? Recognizing that you again have to be patient with yourself. You have to be gentle. Recognize these are unusual times. A lot of the activities that our kids usually engage in, they don't have access to. The other is, what are screens that you guys could do together? So again, in our house, we like Lego Rock Band, or last night when my 11-year-old wanted screens, that I didn't even ask how many hours he had already spent that day, but he knew to tell me he had already spent time outside and he had already done the things that he had to do. And then I suggested, well, let's find a movie we can watch together. And so we did something together as a family. It did involve a screen, but it was kind of a compromise so that he wasn't just alone on a screen playing a video game. But I think the most important thing is not to try to do perfect parenting right now. We're never perfect parents. And right now there are some unusual and extreme circumstances. So making sure that you're coming up with something that works for your family, but that you're also going gentle on yourself and on your kids during this time.
Yes, good advice there. We have Ryan who is asking about some resources that we can offer for parents to help with homeschooling through virtual learning. Dr. Frank was kind enough to send me a link today to some CDC recommendations. So for everybody watching, I'll be putting that link in the comments, and that includes many other resources on that page, but it'll also talk about the things that we've been discussing here: screen time, face masks, symptoms of COVID, and just things that you should sort of be aware of as you are going back either in person or virtual. So Ryan, we will be posting that link here in the comments in just a bit. There's also
Cassandra, that makes me think of one recommendation, which is to make sure that if your child is doing virtual learning, that you learn the software that they're using or the platform that they're using, because a lot of times teachers can post resources, links, things like that, but if you're not using the tool yourself, you may not be aware. And it's also important to kind of check up on the kiddos and make sure that they're doing what they need to do. And so I would strongly recommend sitting down for 30 minutes or so and learning that tool. Even better, if your child can teach you, they'll love to do that. And using that, and then also communicating with the teachers. Again, I think the teachers are really getting creative and very smart about how to do this in new ways. So our kids' teachers have always had tons of great ideas. And then there are a lot of opportunities out there on the internet, even more so than there usually are, to help with tutoring kids, teaching kids, other additional education for kids, things like that.
I love that you brought up learning the software. That's a fabulous recommendation. And I think right now on YouTube, there are a ton of these tutorials to help parents. I've actually, not going to lie, I may have watched a how to do Seesaw video because, that was a new software for us. So yes, YouTube is very good for some of those resources. Ryan, like Dr. Frank is mentioning, just learning software and maybe the system that your kids are using. So exactly. So and those check-ins are always very important too. Good recommendation there. Dr. Frank, let's jump back to masking for a little bit.
Sure.
When again, newer for some kids, some have been doing it for the last 6 months and just know at this point you grab your mask, you're good to go, and then you head out the door. But as they go back to school, it's a little bit different because they will be wearing this most of the day. Let's talk a little bit maybe about, first of all, just laundering masks.
Yes.
It's important to get those things clean every single day. So what are some ways or some tips that you have to keep masks clean? And any recommendations for maybe some younger kids who may lose them during the day or providing that secondary mask for the day? What are some tips that you have for us?
Yeah, so it's not a bad idea to have your backup mask that you carry around. I actually left for work this morning without a mask. Unfortunately, had my backup mask, so it can happen to adults as well. So they may want to have an extra mask at all times in their backpack. It can be in a sealed Ziploc bag, for example, to keep it clean. And some kids may do better with changing a mask halfway through the day if it gets kind of, dirty or moist or what have you. I think that would also be a good idea. And then as far as cleaning them, you want to wash them at least every day, or if they get soiled or dirty, and you wash them like you would normally launder your clothes. The other thing I'll say is there may be some benefit to making sure that whatever the child was wearing at school that day also gets laundered. So you may consider when they come home, like everything comes off, goes in the laundry, they have other clothes that they put on. Again, just to minimize bringing anything home with them. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great advice there. We are getting a comment from Paula who is asking, how do you get smaller children to wear masks? I believe she said she had a 5-year-old daughter or granddaughter in daycare. So how do you get those smaller children to mask?
Yeah. So the thing that gives me hope is that I remember when my children were very little in preschool, and I would ask them to clean up our toy room and they would refuse, right? Or they would do a poor job or what have you. And I would go to nursery school or preschool and the teacher had it, like they were on it. They knew exactly what to do. And I think that is also going to help kids with masks. The teacher is someone that they respect and admire, and she or he is telling them, yep, you need to wear a mask. All of their friends are wearing a mask. It's something that we do, just like we wash our hands or we line up for library time or whatever. But again, those things as far as making the mask use normal. So wearing masks, for example, when they're doing something they enjoy or something that's fun for them, such as screen time or some type of playing, things like that, helping them to kind of play around, just get familiar with what the mask feels like and looks like and what's the right side, and helping them recognize that there's one side that's going to be the inside and one side that's going to be the outside, and that inside is going to be the inside all day long. And the outside is going to be the outside all day long. So those types of things. You could even put your mask on, kind of funny and have them correct you. Kids of a certain age love to correct their parents. So, again, just getting them comfortable, not with, are you going to wear a mask or not, but how are we going to get you to wear a mask that makes you feel comfortable? It's kind of like brushing your teeth. Like, you don't have a conversation every day with your kids about whether they're going to brush their teeth, but you might get a toothpaste that they like, or have them watch a video while they're brushing their teeth, or pick out the toothbrush that moves, or whatever it is, or they get to pick the bathroom they do it in. So again, as much as you're able to help kids have some choice and control, they're going to do a better job. And then again, just like a bike helmet, recognizing that there is a right way to fit this to keep it safe, and it is important to make sure that they're doing that.
Good, good. Lots, again, conversation about masking. A couple of questions here. Let's talk just a little bit about friends. We've talked about social connectedness if kids are virtually learning. Let's talk a little bit about maybe how to have interaction in bigger groups, because we might, maybe those larger play dates. Some people have varying levels of physical and social distancing that they've been taking part in. Those conversations can be hard to have. They're difficult. So how do you have those conversations, and how do you make sure that you feel comfortable as a family when, having a friend come over or sending your child to a friend's house? Where do you even begin with that?
I think this is a great way to have a discussion as a family about what rules you're going to follow, because, it's like Friday night at 7 o'clock, everyone's tired and hungry, and then your child asks you for something and they're very persistent. It's very easy to kind of start fudging some of the rules. So having the rules, these are the rules we have. Like, so for example, in our home, our children don't go into, they have a limited number of people whose homes they can go into. And we've confirmed that those people are also practicing social distancing and have limited their social circle. So that's just a rule. And when my son calls and says, can I do X in so-and-so's house? No, you cannot. The rule is you can't do that, but this is what you can do instead. So having that kind of the quarantine club or your little social bubble that you can, make sure that they're doing the same types of things you're doing can be really, really important. We, for example, will do that with my son's girlfriend's family, and we know kind of what they do to keep safe, and they know what we do to keep safe. There are times, for example, if we traveled somewhere, that we might limit their interactions for a period of time, again, to keep them safe. Similarly, my daughter has 2 friends, and those are the friends that she spent time with, and again, is a very small social circle. I think about it when I had, when my kids first did sleepovers, like I had a list of questions for their parents, right? Do you smoke? Are there weapons in the house? Who else is going to be there? Do you let them watch R-rated movies? Whatever it was that I wanted to make sure my child was safe, and probably a similar type of questions, do you socially distance? Have you traveled? Those kinds of things. Again, may feel a little awkward to ask, but I think it's important to know when your child is interacting, particularly going over to a friend's house, something like that, how safe it is based on the behavior of that family.
Yes, all good questions to ask. And I think we're all becoming a little bit more comfortable having those conversations than we were maybe a few months ago, that it's maybe becoming more normal for all of us. Again, Facebook Live talking about all things family, back to school related. This can include in-person learning, virtual learning. It's your chance to ask Dr. Frank questions that you or your family may be pondering over, as we are just a couple weeks from heading back to school, most of us. So please leave your comments. We will try to get to as many as possible. Dr. Frank, when it comes to oh goodness, lots of different topics here, but we've touched a little bit on this. Really getting kids up and moving during the day, like you said, during their times, if they have, usually had PE at a certain time, or they would usually go to recess. Can you talk maybe a little bit about the different opportunities that we have, maybe virtually, to even get kids moving, even when it's colder outside too?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have Amazon Prime or Netflix, a lot of times they have exercise videos, and it's something you could try together with your kids, or try something fun like, do you want to try yoga or Pilates or something like that, and letting them try that might be helpful. The other is, I know the YMCA has online YMCA 360, and again, lots of different videos of different lengths and different abilities that kids can do. There are some online programs specific for children. I know there was one out of England that was very, very popular. Again, just really kind of directed to kids. We should actually even have one of our own pediatricians who has YouTube videos in which she kind of encourages kids to dance. We've done different things to get our kids engaged. One is having a dance party, and we all have to get dressed up, and my daughter has the playlist, and that's our kind of fun activity. Or even doing things inside together, a game of hide and seek or whatever it is, so that you can get active and get moving and get kind of going around. The other is that we really can exercise outside, biking, walking, et cetera, for a lot of the year, even when it gets cold, we can bundle up. So getting outside is also really important, particularly if you're inside all day. You want to make sure you get outside, get some fresh air, have some sunshine. Those kinds of things can be really helpful as far as a change of pace. But I think there's a ton of online resources. And my guess is that schools may also have some resources that they can direct your kids to. And then even something, again, as simple as if you're in front of a screen for 30 minutes, just walk in place or do 10 jumping jacks. There's apps that have just 7-minute workouts that are just super easy to do. So it doesn't have to be a 2-hour workout or this big complex routine. It can just be these short little bursts that you do. The important thing is to find something that the kids like, because just like us, kids are not going to do something they find boring or uncomfortable. So trying to find things that they like or keeping it novel and new can also help engage them.
Awesome there. Okay, so Jason has a question that is absolutely right up my alley, that I think that we've all probably, it's happened to all of us. I know it. He wants to know, he's going back to work full time. Kids are going to be at home full time. What's the best way to respond when the children do interrupt you during a time where it's not necessarily one of those break times? How should you respond? And we're all talking about being patient with ourselves and being patient with our children, but we're all human as well. So, give us some advice of how to respond.
So I think it's important that kids know whether or not it's an okay time to interrupt you or not. Like when I work from home, I often will work in my bedroom, which is not a great idea because sometimes it's okay to come in and sometimes it's not okay to come in. So you can have a sign on the door, do not disturb, or something like that, so that they know, is it okay or is it not okay? If they choose to disregard, they know that you're working and they come in anyway, obviously make sure it's, nothing's super important or serious, and then just calmly redirecting them, reminding them of the rules. This is going to be new for them. So it's going to be odd for them potentially to be home with a parent, but not be able to just go to the parent and ask them things. And when you're not at work, it's really important to disengage from work and then focus completely on them. So they know when mom is at work and she's focused on work, that's her priority. But when she's done with work, she's focused on me, and that's my time when I can talk to her. You may also try to figure out why they're interrupting you. So is it because they really need attention? Is it because they don't feel like they're comfortable with school? They have something they don't understand. They don't know how to ask a question, a conflict with a sibling, something like that. And then like any other child behavior, focusing on positive reinforcement, which can be hard to do. You have to really actively pay attention to that. But that could be, this morning, we're going to work on mom being able to work uninterrupted. Yesterday we had 3 interruptions. So today we want only 2, or you could say we're going to spend 2 hours and mom just gets to work unless there's an emergency. And after that, we're going to do XYZ together. And then making a big deal about it if they do let you work uninterrupted. You did so great. You were a hard worker. You let me work. That was really awesome. I'm so proud of you. Those kinds of things like you would for any other type of behavior you're trying to promote.
Oh, love that advice. Love it.
Or you could get a deadbolt for your door. That's the other thing.
Maybe we'll do a check-in in 3 months, and that may be some of the comments from our parents here. Absolutely. We're getting a question. This is a wonderful one from Sarah, who wants some tips for children as they go back for in-person learning, how often to wash hands, use hand sanitizer, and limit touching other items. And I know a lot of school districts have, for example, we have our own individual school supplies, and there's no sharing of markers or art supplies or anything like that. So what tips and advice do you have for hand washing, sanitizer, and limiting touching other items?
So you want to, hand washing hasn't really changed that much. You want to wash your hands, again, when you've used the bathroom, before you eat, after you eat, if you touch your mask, if you blow your nose, if you cough, anything like that. It's also important to wash hands or use hand sanitizer if you touch something that a group is working on. So for example, if you are all working on a project with blocks or something like that, after you're done, again, doing the hand sanitizer or washing hands. The CDC has some wonderful visuals you could either put at school or at home that remind you and kind of have fun ways of reminding kids about washing. Again, the silly songs that you can sing while you're washing your hands, really important. Having kids have their own individual hand sanitizer will encourage them to use that. And again, just lots of reminders, and then modeling the behavior at home, right? So, we're about to eat, let's everyone go wash their hands, kind of making a big deal out of the fact that we're doing that just to reinforce what's happening at school.
Yeah, and maybe this time at home is also a really good time for us to get into those habits and practice in preparation for an in-person return. That, if kids are at home, they're washing their hands before every meal, before every snack, they're using hand sanitizer if they're picking up other objects. It's really good practice for when we are prepared to go back for in-person learning.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Good, good. Again, taking comments and questions for Dr. Frank. We have a few minutes left here. Dr. Frank, any topics that you've heard from any of your patients or families, or anything that you can think of, maybe from your own kids that have had questions? Anything that is top of mind for you?
So I think the most frequent question I get when I'm talking to my patients is, what should I do? So for parents who have a choice about going back to school or in person or virtually, it can be really hard to make that choice. That's a choice our family had to make. And I think, a couple of thoughts on that. One is the CDC link that I think you're going to post actually has a checklist for you to go through. I think it's really helpful. What are the considerations for the school? What are the considerations for your family? What are the considerations around your ability to virtually learn or provide that kind of environment at home? So that can be a good checklist just to help you ask those kinds of questions that are so important. The other thing is recognizing we are all in this together. There is so much uncertainty, so much we don't know. We are constantly weighing the risks and benefits of different decisions we're making. So whatever you decide for your family, feel confident in that decision. You made a good decision with the information you had at the time you have it. It's important to have a flexible mindset, recognizing that things are definitely going to change. And in ways we may not expect. That's been a theme this whole year. So recognizing the need to be flexible and helping kids to recognize that there are going to be changes and that that's not unexpected, those kinds of things I think are really important. But I do think this is a really important year for for parents to go easy on themselves and not feel like they're making a life or death decision if they're sending their kids to school or not feel that if their child stays home that they're not going to learn, those kinds of things. I have one of my very good friends is an elementary school teacher, and she said, you know what, if they can't read this year, we'll teach them to read next year. Like, the teachers are really, really good at helping kids catch up after summer. And if summer is expanded a little bit longer, they're going to be really good at helping those kids catch up, even if it's a longer period of time. And kids are very, very resilient.
And that's what I was going to add. Our kids, I don't know if we give them enough credit. They truly are so resilient, so adaptable, and they embrace change better than we do as adults.
Yes.
That is for sure. So I think that is a great place to leave it, Dr. Frank. Again, we will continue monitoring the comments on our feed. I'll be posting those CDC links and a couple of other resources for parents. But if you have other questions, please leave them and we will try to get to them in a bit. We may even check in with Dr. Frank to ask her for a couple of follow-up questions. But again, we appreciate your time, Dr. Frank. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. And thank all of you for watching. Good luck this year.
Great. Thank you.